Recovery Lifestyles with Carmel. Inside the lives of women and men who have gained freedom and overcome, going on to live healthy, meaningful lives. Let's raise awareness together and end stigmas surrounding recovery, addiction, mental health, eating disorders, abusive relationships. These are stories of those who have recovered and are now living lives that are inspiring and on purpose.
I'm here today with Tristan Sophia, and Tristan has 25 years sober. She holds a doctorate in psychology and is board certified in life coaching. Today, Tristan coaches ambitious entrepreneurial women by helping them remove limiting beliefs that are blocking them from achieving success inside their business. So, Tristan, 25 years sober, that is huge. Did you want to speak on that a little bit? Maybe how did it all begin? Where did that start for you?
Well, I drank from 13 to 26, and I didn't start out slowly. I didn't start out just drinking on the weekends. I was drinking in the morning by the time I was 14. I mean, when I tell people that, they expect, oh, you must have, been kicked out of your house or been homeless or dropped out of school. I didn't. I lived a double life. I got straight A's. I was a cheerleader. I was in a ballet company. But I was getting drunk to the point of passing out almost every single night. And so that's what I did for 13 years. I was given grace by God. I literally woke up one day in 1993, and I always say the blinders were removed from my eyes. It was nothing I did. I didn't believe in God at that point. I didn't say a prayer. I was depressed, suicidal. I had attacked my boyfriend the night before. I knew he was going to leave me. And I woke up the next morning, and within the span of 8 hours, realized I was an alcoholic. And thank God, I don't even know what happened. I just reached out for help the first time in my life. And I've been in a 12-step program ever since and been sober ever since. Not like it's been easy, but it's, that phrase, my worst day drunk. No, my best day drunk is still worse than my worst day sober.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It still is so much better than the life I used to lead. And it just took persistence and the grace of God. I believe that you have to have that cooperation. It's not just God granting me sobriety, and it's not just me working on my own. It's that cooperation.
So how did you find out about the 12-step program?
Well, what's interesting is that I had already been studying psychology, and I wanted to be a psychologist. I graduated with my bachelor's and didn't know what I was going to do. I was still drinking at that point, and I started working for a group home for emotionally disturbed adolescents. Of which I was one. It's just that I was the staff. And we had the teenagers in there had substance abuse problems, and I was taking them to 12-step meetings. And I remember sitting next to them, and they weren't even paying attention. And I was just like, oh my God, this program is amazing. It's really good. Everyone's here. And then a handful of years later, I found myself in the same program. So that's how I kind of got introduced to it. But the 9th day of my sobriety, after I got out of a crisis center, a fellow resident who'd been in there with me took me to my first meeting.
Wow. So when you look back, you can see the hand of God assisting you all along the way when you didn't even believe in God. I find that so fascinating. I find it very fascinating that the 12-step program really is about surrendering to a higher power. And I don't think any of us realize that when we're walking in, do we? But then we're transformed so intensely that it's like, oh, okay, maybe I do believe in a power greater than myself. Maybe a little bit, right? Was that kind of the same for you, or what was your experience?
Yes. Oh my God, I love talking with you about this. Um, I always like to say that I didn't ask God for help and I didn't believe in God before I got into the program, because a lot of people say, yeah, I said a prayer and then all these good things started happening, which was true for them. But I want people to know that it can also happen for you if you don't believe in a higher power, if you don't believe in God, if you didn't grow up with religion
Mhm.
or just a belief in a higher power. I still got the grace of God, even though I didn't believe in him and I didn't ask for help, but I got it. And I remember in my very first meeting that day, I had been raised in the Episcopal Church. And at the end of the meeting, everyone stood up, we're holding hands, and they said, we're going to say the Lord's Prayer. And I made a decision right there. I'm like, am I going to do this or am I not going to do this? Am I going to do this full out and pray to a God I don't believe in? And I made that quick decision, grabbed people's hands, and I remembered the prayer from my childhood. And I said the prayer, and that was the key, I believe, to my recovery. It was like doing things that people I trusted did, even though I didn't believe in them. But
Right.
I wanted, I'm sure you understand, I wanted what they had. And I was so desperate, I was going to believe in God and try to find God.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Right, right. I know for myself, I mean, I wasn't raised with a religion, or I didn't go to church or anything like that. So it was very new to me. And I can remember standing there and feeling really awkward and feeling really out of place, obviously, but being in so much pain and knowing that I cannot go forward and do this another day. My addiction was not just alcohol, it was drugs as well. And so it was debilitating, and the lows were so low that I just stood there and just went with it, right? Um, do you have any advice for anybody that may feel in that similar situation that is like, what is this?
Yeah, you make me think back on, especially the last few years of my drinking. Like, I knew if somebody, if the person that you're describing who's in so much pain, I've been there, you've been there. I knew I needed help, but I still had this idea that asking for help and admitting that I drank too much, that stigma was probably the biggest reason that kept me from doing that, because it was embarrassing for me. It was shameful for me. Um, there's lots of people who drink, but they're not alcoholics. And I knew that I was different. And I resisted being different, and I resisted asking for help for so long. And so I just want to encourage anyone out there, and I know that there's millions of people out there in pain and knowing they need help. For me, the longer I put it off, the further down I went. I knew I needed help, and I knew that I couldn't fix it on my own, but I resisted asking for help for many years, even when I was 15 and I knew I had depression.
Yeah, so just
So
emotions, but not really there yet, understanding yet, experiencing the grace you spoke of earlier that you do receive with just a little bit of belief. But that's hard. Yeah.
yeah, but you're right. It doesn't take this, okay, I'm going to get down on my knees and surrender to God. Okay, God, help me. No, just make a phone call. Make a phone call to a trusted friend and say, hey, I need help. Can you help me? Open the phone book. That's what I did. I opened the phone book and I was led to a crisis center. And, everything went from that one phone call.
Mm. So, what has recovery done for you today in your life? I mean, obviously, a lot. You have a doctorate in psychology, you have a successful business, you're coaching entrepreneurial women, but what is maybe the number one thing that you have now that you didn't have before?
There's so many things, it's hard to choose one, but I would say, yeah, I'll keep it to one. Um, even before I started drinking, and then when I was drinking, when I look back now, I was searching for something. I had an emptiness. I had a spiritual malady. I didn't know it, but I needed and wanted a belief in a higher power. Up until my, coming to believe in a higher power after working the steps, I just felt so alone, so empty. I don't care if I had friends or, sponsors. It didn't matter. I felt completely alone in the world. And not like I don't feel alone these days, but it's different. I know that I can rely on a higher power, and I have a practice of prayer and meditation. And the longer I stay sober, the more proof I have, the more evidence I'm given that when I surrender and work the steps and do what my sponsor tells me, I get the results I've always been searching for. So it's like not me against the world anymore. It's me cooperating with a higher energy source. And it just gives me more comfort. It's decreased my depression and anxiety. And it's been the greatest thing in my life.
So believing in a power greater than yourself, starting there, that has been your ultimate turning point for sure. That's what I'm hearing from you. So
Yeah.
yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the stigma surrounding addiction. People carry a lot of shame, and people who may be struggling to manage their drinking or whatever addictive behavior that they may be involved in. But that shame can be so debilitating. What can we do?
I love what you're doing. I think there's a lot of things that we can be doing, but one of the most important things is encouraging people from all walks of life to share their recovery story. A lot of times we tend to just hear from, I don't know, in some of my meetings, I just hear from maybe one group, and that's the group who ended up homeless and now they're in recovery. And a lot of times, or more often than not, addiction affects every single person from every walks of life. And we need to hear from like the CEO down to the person struggling with mental illness who was homeless for 20 years and everyone in between. We all need to share our story, because I feel like in certain populations, talking about addiction is more accepted than other populations. For me, being a psychologist, I mean, for many years, I wouldn't even share with my mental health colleagues that I was in recovery, because there was still a stigma in the mental health population, among mental health workers, even a stigma if you were in recovery. And the more that we talk about it and come out of our little, recovery closets, the more people are going to feel safer to ask for help and say, I have a problem, I need help.
Yeah. That makes me think of two things, actually. One, when I first started going into the meetings, it was really amazing that there was such a diverse group of people. I mean, we had your lawyers and your doctors, and then we had homeless people and people being driven that were given day passes from prison. But everybody was there with the same issue, and we were all there as equal. There was none of this, I'm trying to think of the right word.
Yeah, like hierarchy.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
We were seeing each other for who we were. There was no competition, there was nothing. We were just there to help. And I find that so fascinating because, like you just said, as you kind of achieve more or gain more in life, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I need to hide these pieces of myself, right? But
Yeah.
help anybody. That just isolates. So
Yeah.
thank you for saying that. This is such a wonderful conversation to have with you today. And what is one thing that, and maybe not just one, because I know we have lots of things we could talk about, but what is something that we could offer to someone listening today that maybe has someone in their life dealing with addiction, and how could they help them?
Wow, you totally just reminded me of something. And this has happened to me more than once. But my answer would be to open up the lines of communication. Be honest. If you see someone struggling with addiction, I see it all the time. People whisper behind their backs, but they won't talk to the person about it. It's like that just increases the stigma, and it increases that person's shame. They know what they're doing. So, I mean, if you're someone on the outside and you see someone struggling, be honest, go up and talk to them and tell them what you're noticing, and then ask them what you can do to help.
Wow. Yeah. Isn't that powerful? It's just that, again, we need to start talking about it. We need to start treating people who need assistance not like they're bad people. Addicts are not bad people. I think we become bad people when we're isolated and alone and further deeper down in the addiction. So Tristan, this has been, I feel, a very impactful, powerful conversation. And if anyone listening out there would like to get into contact with you, how can they do that?
Thank you. I have loved doing this conversation. Absolutely. Recovery is my favorite topic, and I love talking about it with you because I know you understand. So if anyone wants to join my Facebook group, I have a great Facebook group of entrepreneurial women, and it's called the Confident and Successful Entrepreneur. So they can just go in the search box in Facebook and put in the Confident and Successful Entrepreneur and find it there.
Well, thank you. So you heard it. If you would like to connect with Tristan, go on Facebook and type in the Confident and
Successful.
The Confident and Successful Woman.
Thank you again for joining us on Recovery Lifestyles Podcast, where we are committed to raising awareness and ending stigmas surrounding addiction and mental health.